I have been playing Flesh and Blood for over a year now, and I'm gonna be very honest with you. I thought that I was actually getting pretty decent at the game. I'm no huge competitive player. I've never really played anything past an armory, but at least at that level, I felt like I was getting a handle on the game. I felt like I was actually a pretty decent player, to the point where I was like, hey, if I was to go and actually try to be competitive, I could actually have a shot. But recently, I have found out that I know far less about this game than I had initially thought. Because there's one aspect of Flesh and Blood that I haven't until now had to learn, and it's actually something that I knew about, but again, was never in a situation where I actually had to utilize it, and so it's an area of the game that I am fundamentally lacking. And now that I am playing Dromai as my main hero, I am finding out I am not nearly as good at Flesh and Blood as I had originally thought. And the thing that I have no clue about how to do is pitch stack.
Huge thank you to all of my supporters. If you'd like to join the Chad Army, you can either become a channel member or join my Patreon with the link in the description. And if it's cards you want, you can use my affiliate link to Red Riot Games to help support me as well.
So pitch stacking, for those of you who don't know, is essentially you take cards in your hand, especially in the early game, and you basically pitch specific ones to set up for your late game. Now, up until this point, even in Classic Constructed, you really haven't been seeing the second cycle of your decks. Because since Monarch's release, the formats have basically been Aggro Chain, Aggro Briar, Aggro Starvo, and then we had Prism, and we had 5 for a few weeks, and it's just been a lot of very fast aggressive decks that end the game, usually before that second cycle or at the very start of it, so learning how to pitch stack has not been necessary. On top of that, up until the past few months, I was playing mostly Blitz, and in that format, pitch stacking is basically not even a thing because most games end in 3 to 5 turns. But now that the Classic Constructed format is a lot slower, and I'm playing Dromai, who is a hero who needs to pitch stack, I am finding myself winning far less than I used to. Now that doesn't mean that I'm not winning games at all, but I'm finding it much more difficult to secure those wins, especially against heroes like Oldhim and Bravo, who I used to have an easy time with Prism. Because when you go up against an Oldhim player, you absolutely have no choice but to pitch stack your dragons. You have to set up for the late game because they have a bunch of poppers and they can use their defense reactions and they can just do so many things to slow your game down and stop you from getting those overwhelming turns with the dragons. And so I have very unceremoniously come to realize that not learning how to pitch stack over the past year and a half has really hampered me as a Flesh and Blood player, because now that I am forced to do so, I don't know what I'm doing. Up until this point, I've understood the basics of pitch stacking, and by that I mean I have the vague idea of, hey, I'm playing Dorinthia and I have a route in the first few turns, and yeah, I could use it to get the advantage right now and deal extra damage, but maybe it's better to pitch it and save it for later in the game when I either see it again or when I Singing Steelblade it out and use it on a turn where it's absolutely crucial that I have a route. That is the bare basics of pitch stacking, knowing that, hey, these cards might be very useful in the late game. You know, maybe I want to pitch a few reds early instead of just blues, so that way if the game goes long, I at least still have some reds to use in the late game so I can get in that extra damage. But pitch stacking goes so much further than that. I've been listening to better players talk about this subject and learning that some of them quite literally can remember the order of cards that they put them in, or they just know red, red, blue, blue, red, red. Like they know what they're doing and they can remember for the most part what's going on while still playing the game. And it's blowing my mind because I'm sitting here like, I barely know what I'm doing. I'm just getting the general idea of, okay, yeah, I pitched a Homeltai. Might want to try to make sure there's a blue or two in there so that I can actually play it. It's showing me now the sheer level of difference between like a really good Flesh and Blood player and your average player. Flesh and Blood is thoroughly a game that rewards skill over anything else. Like with Dromai, it's not just about learning lines of play, it's specifically learning a whole new function of the game that I wasn't utilizing before. I've never had to think about the specific order and the way that I pitch things and having to set up for a later game, and I actually love it. It's fun, it's challenging, and it's giving me something to aim towards. Knowing that there is something that I am very bad at and I need to improve upon has given me just this force. Like I want to play more. I want to play my bad matchups. My friend has an Oldhim deck that I've yet to be able to beat, and that's all I want to face because I want to beat his stupid frickin' Oldhim deck. God, I hate old him. But I just wanted to share my realization of my own ineptitude with everybody because, like, Flesh and Blood is a genuinely complex game. And I know that when you don't feel good enough at it, it feels bad. Like, people want to win. They want to do well, or at the very least, not feel like they're so far behind everybody else. And when you suddenly have a situation where you go from being decent to suddenly you've changed your deck or the format changes, there's one thing that you've never had to use before and it's now kicking your ass, like, it can feel really crappy. But take the challenge, take that upon your chin and go, you know what? Cool, I'm bad, I'm gonna change that. I'm gonna get better. I'm gonna learn how to do this thing because, man, it is so invigorating to have a challenge and to have something that you need to get better at. It is just so wonderful. It really fills me up with a drive and a passion and a desire to get better in every aspect of my life. And I can't believe that something as stupid as pitch stacking has got me feeling fired up to improve. I just really love Flesh and Blood. This game is amazing.